Good morning, doctor. Now I will start my major project presentation, and my topic of major project is site interpreting. As the common knowledge for anyone who touched the field of interpreting, they must know that interpreting are divided into many modes of interpretation, such as consecutive interpreting, simultaneous interpreting, site interpreting, and also sign interpreting. And site interpreting, yes, is one of the modes of interpretation, and it requires interpreters to interpret and written document into oral presentation in another language. And it is very true that
Site interpretation.
it's very important in legal or business field. It is because of the probability of happening crimes are gradually increased, so that site interpreter is very needed for these two main fields to interpret the documents, such as leaflet, advertisement, brochures, contract, and moreover. And site interpreting is not that paying much attention by interpreter, because interpreters thought that the income that brought by site interpreting are not that much when compared to other modes, especially simultaneous interpreting and consecutive interpreting. But I'm pretty sure that site interpreting is having a big potential that giving the income for the interpreter nowadays, since the diplomatic relations that becomes the main business deal nowadays. And it is also for legal document that needs site interpreter. So it is very true that site interpreting is having a big potential. And now for discussion part, the first is challenges faced while interpreting session. When I was conducting my site interpreting session, I found that I'm not that fluent in English, and I couldn't pronounce the vocabularies correctly. I knew that this error should be avoided to make my site interpreting session to become more professional. And I'm not that fluent in English, and my writing skills is better than speaking skills for English, and it must be improved by many practices. And for the next challenges I face is the accuracy of word. It is because of the text that given is much of the vocabularies that I didn't see before, and I'm pretty sure that my interpreting session for part one is better than my interpreting session for part two. And the accuracy of word for part two, I'm not that sure about the word I use or the structure, but it is paying much attention in the paragraph and the meaning, but not the sentence. So I think I did it better. And for the skills needed for interpreters, site interpreting is also having the skills to develop by site interpreting. The first is fast reading or reading comprehension skills. The reading step is very important for every interpreter to do while they get their job, because of this step will help them to comprehend and understand the content in the source text, and they could prepare well with the topic they get. This make the interpreter could express the content well in another language when they are having a more comprehension about this text. Then is the interpreter should learn to deal with unknown words that written in source text, because sometimes the new site interpreter will get some jobs that with the industry they didn't touch before, especially technical industry due to the technology has been developed well in nowadays and there's too much new machines that imported from other countries. So translate errors should always be avoided because those errors sometimes could be a very serious mistake for the target audience. And the third is interpreters should train their sight paraphrasing and speaking skills. This is due to the sight interpreting required interpreter to interpret the written documents into target language. Interpreters should train their sight paraphrasing skills to make sure that they could paraphrase the text while they are watching the text and not to read out the original document. And they have to train their speaking skills also because sometimes the target audience couldn't uh, understand what are the interpreters saying because of the dialects. So interpreter have to make sure target audience could understand it. Now for the conclusion part, sight interpretation is looks like much easier than other main mode of interpretation, but it needs more practices compared to them because of it needs interpreter to focus on the written document and not to interpret it by word for word translation because sometimes the meaning will change and make the target audience confused about the content and the messages that the writer tried to share with the target listeners. And it is too much industry that needs an interpreter, regardless they are business field, technical fields, legal fields, medical fields, and so on to help them for interpreting the written documents from the source language into the target language. When the more practices you done, and the better your interpreting session is. It is very recommended for developing or creating more professions that related to sight interpretation for the aim to expand these sectors into our society. That's my presentation. Thank you, Doctor.